Hey, what's up, you losers? My name's Andres. I'm Kaiju Noir, and I hate robots. Getter Robo is stupid, and I make dumb comics, and I don't like this panel. I'm hungry. I'm gonna eat a burger.
All right, so for those who are probably just this term for the first time ever, what is Tokusatsu exactly? It is a term that's used to refer to Japanese media that largely consists of special effects, which is what Tokusatsu translates into. This can be suitmation, miniatures, pyrotechnics, so on and so forth. Here we have Godzilla, who was essentially the origin point of this huge subgenre of media, and below is Ultraman, the one who really brought it up to new heights.
And to establish just what is considered the most mainstream of tokusatsu franchises, we have ourselves the four pillars of tokusatsu, that being Godzilla, which started out with the original 1954 film, going all the way up for the last 70 years up until the most recent film, Godzilla Minus One over in Japan, and Godzilla X Kong, the new empire here stateside in America. We also have Ultraman, a superhero franchise that started way back on television in 1966, continuing on to this very day, whom some of you might have also known from the most recent animated film, Ultraman Rising, exclusive to Netflix. Next up, we have Kamen Rider, a series started by legendary mangaka Shotaro Shinomori, creator of Cyborg 009 and such. Kamen Rider is another franchise that has gone on to this very day, even so far as getting adapted a few times in the West. Recently, we have had the Hideaki Anno's movie, Shin Kamen Rider, which is probably the most mainstream Kamen Rider had gotten in recent years. And finally, we have Super Sentai, the very series that gave birth to Power Rangers, another staple of Japanese television, also created by Shotaro Shinomori.
Also turning 50 next year, if I'm not mistaken, which is
Very
kind of
true.
crazy to think about.
Absolutely. All of these franchises are getting up there in age. Oh, yeah, and there's also that turtle over there as well. You may have heard of him. Gamera, very big star on MST3K. He's still kicking every once in a while. And also still very beloved by his fans.
It's okay, Gamera. You may not be insanely popular, but we still love you. All right, so Tokusatsu has actually had a bit of a footing here. Over the years, it has proven itself to be influential in regards to media localization, especially with shows like Ultraman that would be imported to the United States, get dubbed in English, so on and so forth. This in turn made the subgenre a lot more accessible, and there are cases where there have been domesticated alterations, such as the case with Masked Rider and Power Rangers, which is interesting given recent events and how it seems the Power Rangers franchise, as we know it, seems to be dying a very slow death, and it's nowhere the powerhouse that it was back in 1993 and across decades. So if anything, this is the best time to venture into this wonderful world of Japanese media. Now that one of like the main pillars of what really helped kickstart this genre to a more global status is starting to dwindle a little. And of course, there are instances where overseas companies have produced their own tokusatsu movies and shows.
All right, so jumping into this, my first recommendation for the world of tokusatsu would be 1957's The Mysterians, directed by Ishiro Honda. Aliens invade Earth to negotiate in what is actually imperial control over the human race. This is pretty much like Japan's take on the alien invasion genre, basically their take on War of the Worlds. You've got aliens, they land on Earth, they wish to colonize the planet, want to procreate with human women, and essentially wish to reign their reign the world, control the world with their superior intellect and technology. This movie features an all-star lineup featuring director Ishiro Honda, writer Takashi Kimura, with actors such as Kenshi Zahara, Akihito Hirata, Momoko Kochi, all of which are many familiar faces if you are a fan of Godzilla movies. Speaking of Godzilla, we also have Akira Fukube, who is the composer for this film. Basically, this is the A team of Toho back in the day that would reign supreme throughout the 50s and 60s during the golden age of Tokusatsu, classic Showa era Tokusatsu films. And this is also, to mark the occasion, this was Toho's first widescreen full color tokusatsu film, with their first proper full color film being 1957's or 1956's Rodan. This movie also marks the first appearance of Mogura, which is the giant robot you see over on the left side of the screen, in a mixture of both a mole and a samurai. This robot would go on to appear in the Godzilla series in the 1994 film Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Overall, it's very beautiful, it's loud, it's explosive, of so many visual effects taking place on screen, a luscious amount of action and explosions, and also contains one of the long-running themes of Ishiro Honda's film, that is the theme of unity, that together mankind from around the world, regardless of nation or creed, can come together and unite as one against a greater threat. This is a theme that is very prevalent in a lot of Ishiro Honda's movies, a very optimistic, uplifting message that together we can do more than we could ever do apart. And this movie pretty much exemplifies those themes while also providing a stunning amount of spectacle. And also, it's available for streaming on the Criterion channel. There was previously a DVD release from Media Blasters, which has unfortunately gone long out of print. But thankfully, it is still available for viewing to this day.
And watching this also feels like a very personal film for Ishiro Honda outside of the original Godzilla, given how he was actually there and present during World War II, so he got to experience a lot of these tragedies and horrors with firsthand experience, and like what he did with Godzilla, he pretty much does the same thing here. And it's arguably just as profound when you put that into context. And additionally, I suppose this would also technically be the first ever like live action mecha feature film. Just to kind of tie it back to an earlier panel Andres and I did long ago.
Absolutely. All right, and so our next film, we go from alien invasion movie to mystery, crime drama, suspense, and horror. We have 1960's The Human Vapor, also directed by the king of classic tokusatsu, Ishiro Honda. A librarian is a victim of an experiment which turns his body into gas, as he is then carried away by the greed of his power. This was the third installment in Toho's Henshin Ningen series, which translates to Human Transformation series. This is the third film that they made after both The Invisible Avenger and The H-Man. While The Invisible Avenger is more of a crime drama, The H-Man being more of a mystery horror film, this one sort of takes elements from both previous films to make a movie that is wrapped in mystery, where various robberies are taking place by an unknown assailant. Meanwhile, this one dancer is somehow gaining a lot of funding to kickstart her career. Ultimately, we find out it is this woman's boyfriend, Mizuno, who ends up becoming the titular human vapor, as he becomes obsessed with supporting his girlfriend against her own will, turning her into the #1 star while also threatening the lives of anyone who tries to stop him or his girlfriend. The experimental effects used to depict Mizuno Okamoto's transformations are nothing short of incredible, featuring a combination of both dry ice, balloons to depict the floating nature of his empty clothing, as well as a lot of animation as well to provide a very unique visual experience that honestly I have not seen in a lot of other movies. On top of that, it's just one of the most suspenseful films I have ever seen from Ishiro Honda's career, and the climax itself it's nothing but it's a very simple climax taking place in one single location, but there's amount of tension that builds incredibly throughout the entirety of that climax that it turns out to be one of the most effective uses of drama and build up and suspension that I have seen in a lot of Ishiro Honda's library. Additionally, there is a South Korean Netflix adaptation currently in the works. They have a director and several actors attached to the project, though no word has been mentioned yet as to when this new version of the Human Vapor will be released yet. So only time will tell if we will see the Human Vapor strike again. And additionally, this movie is available on Amazon Prime Video.
I believe the director behind Parasite the Grey is also behind this upcoming Netflix adaptation, and while I've yet to see it, I have heard some really good things about Parasite the Grey, so that alone makes it something worth looking forward to in that regard.
Next up is one of my personal favorite films of all time, Frankenstein vs. Baragon from 1965, directed once again by Ishiro Honda.
I'm starting to notice a trend here.
Well, what can I say? Ishiro Honda has made a ton of tokusatsu movies. He's pretty much the king of this genre, the originator of this genre, essentially, who helped pioneer this style of filmmaking. And so when looking at stuff outside of Godzilla, there's still a lot of work of Honda's that is still continues to be enjoyed by many to this day. So, yes, the heart of Frankenstein is mutated into a giant battles a subterranean dinosaur. There may or may not be a giant octopus involved, which I will get into shortly. The concept itself was born from a pitch from Willis O'Brien, the animator behind King Kong, who wanted to do a movie called King Kong vs. Frankenstein, later pitched as King Kong vs. Prometheus. Eventually, his business partner, a film producer, went behind his back and tried to sell this idea to Toho, who later adapted it and turned it into King Kong vs. Godzilla. Eventually, Toho was interested in revisiting the Frankenstein concept, started toying with the idea of a Frankenstein versus Godzilla movie, before eventually removing Godzilla and replacing him with a brand new original creation specifically for this movie, with the character of Baragon, a creature who would also, much like Mogira, be incorporated into the Godzilla franchise. And what you have here is a film that combines aspects of Toho's transforming human series with the kaiju genre. You have this tragic character of Frankenstein, who was born from an irradiated heart that was transported over to Japan by Nazi Germany in the middle of World War II. And where did the heart end up? In the middle of Hiroshima, where of course the atomic bomb mutated it into becoming a new creature all on its own. And despite various humans wishing to help Frankenstein live a normal life, it is unfortunate that this tragic figure becomes the giant that he is known to be in the movie. And by the climax, he is forced to do battle against another creation, another misfit of nature in the form of Baragon. Interestingly enough, the movie all features an alternate ending that was made at the request of the American producers of this film, in which Frankenstein, after finishing off his fight with Baragon, does battle with a giant octopus that seemingly comes out of nowhere. Why was there a giant octopus in the middle of it? It's because the producer was a really big fan of the giant octopus sequence from King Kong versus Godzilla and said, "I want that for this film as well." So for the Japanese, for the American, for the international version of this film, they ultimately shot an alternate ending specifically for those international markets. And while we do have a movie, we had a DVD release featuring both endings from Media Blasters. It has since unfortunately gone out of print, but the movie is available for streaming on the Criterion channel. I can't say this enough how much I absolutely love this movie, given that it combines a lot of history, real life history, World War II history, with a lot of sci-fi concepts, thrown in a bit dash of horror. You got really great build up and drama with throughout this film. And on top of that, you just got it's a really cool look at how special effects are used to bring the Japanese countryside back to life through models and miniatures. And because I lived in the Japanese countryside for 6 years, I definitely have a lot of fondness for that countryside environment. And that's why this movie has since grown on me and how it has had like a bit of a personal connection. Also, there's this famous scene where Baragon is attacking a farm, eats a bunch of chickens, and goes after a horse, which is displayed by a wiggling prop. And there's a funny behind-the-scenes story where at one point, one of Honda's assistants asked him, "Isn't it better if we just spliced in footage of a real horse? It would look more real than this model." Ishiro Honda said, "Yeah, it probably would look more realistic, but it wouldn't be as fun." And it's that sort of creative drive and spirit and energy that is the reason why I love this movie. When you have someone behind the scenes who was wanted to just have as much fun as possible with this film. And yeah, major props to Eiji Tsuburaya, of course, who is the man who brought a lot of these special effects together for a lot of these films we have mentioned so far.
Speaking of Subaraya, the Baragon suit that we see here would be used as the basis for a lot of kaiju in the currently ongoing Ultra series. In fact, we're still seeing some of those monsters to this day. Like two notable ones are Naranga and Gabora, who appeared all the way back in 1966 when the first show started, and Shin Ultraman from a couple years back. They decided to update and modernize those designs for that film. So not only is this one of the quintessential tokusatsu films of the 1960s, it's also one of the most influential in that regard. But about that giant octopus. All right, so we have the War of the Gargantuas, which also features the same giant octopus. Here we have two brother monsters. One devours and destroys, one defends and protects, and then the two creatures battle for the fate of mankind. This is a loose sequel to Frankenstein versus Baragon. This is where that octopus comes in. It is implied that after the octopus killed Frankenstein in the previous film, Frankenstein's body had split into two different organisms. Each of them representing two halves of the same monster. We have Sanda, who's like this all-powerful, demented creature who's always feasting on animals and humankind, and we have Sanda, who has a great fondness for humans, as he understands their goodwill that they try to bestow on him. Basically, try to make him fit into society until he just grew too big for it. This was also the first cinematic appearance of maser cannons, which would be a major mainstay throughout the Godzilla series, as they would appear in later films, especially the Heisei series and the Millennium series, like Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. The maser cannons would also appear via stock footage in later Godzilla films when the budgets would get way too small to film new footage of them. Like Godzilla vs. Megalon and Godzilla vs. Gigan heavily utilized footage from this film in particular for those shots of maser cannons. So much that in Godzilla vs. Megalon, you can still kind of see Guyver in some of the footage that they used, which is kind of funny. But I understand, I guess. This is also the last U.S.-Japanese co-production between Toho and UPA. They also produced Frankenstein Conquers the World, aka Frankenstein vs. Baragon, as well as Monster Zero, also known as Invasion of Astro Monster. Um, and this film is also available for streaming on HBO Max and the Criterion Channel.
And for those of you who happen to can track this down, the movie was previously released on DVD by Classic Media in a 2-pack with the original Rodan. And if you happen to have that DVD, I definitely implore you to check out the bonus documentary directed by Norman England, which is called Bringing Godzilla Down to Size. The movie has since documentary has since been re-uploaded to YouTube. But if you happen to have that out of print DVD, definitely implore you to check out both movies and that excellent documentary. All right, and next up from 1967, we have King Kong Escapes, directed by, of course, you know him by now, Ishiro Honda. Doctor
Wait, who's
Who.
that?
Doctor Who, no, not that one, creates a mechanical doppelganger of the eighth wonder of the world and controls the real King Kong as well to acquire the mysterious and powerful element X up in the Arctic. But it's not long until King Kong escapes to Tokyo. This movie was an interesting collaboration between Rankin Bass and Toho. Rankin Bass had previously created the King Kong Show, an animated series from the 60s, and wanted to partner with Toho in order to create a live-action adaptation of the series. Their first pitch originally was Operation Robinson Crusoe, King Kong vs. Ebirah, which ultimately Toho picked up and retooled into a Godzilla movie and turned it into Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, aka Ebirah Horror of the Deep. So Rankin Bass's next attempt was to pitch an actual King Kong movie this time, featuring both Doctor Who and Mechanicong, the villains from the animated series. Those would be the only real connections to said series, as this movie instead goes on a brand new direction, involving a team of scientists who research Kong on this mysterious island, which he battles a not T-Rex in the form of Gorosaurus, and would eventually be captured and ultimately try to escape along with King Kong, while also dealing with the evil, dastardly Doctor Who and his assistant, Madam X. This is a very fun movie. It basically feels like a live-action Saturday morning cartoon. And so it has a lot of that very fun energy, very high-concept fantasy. It's never dull. There's never a dull moment in this movie. And it features a very interesting blend of American and Japanese actors. In fact, this was also the case with both Invasion of Astro Monster and the previously covered Frankenstein vs. Baragon, where the American actors would be dubbed in Japanese for the Japanese dub, and the Japanese actors would be dubbed in English for the American cut. Unfortunately, in the case of one actress, Linda Miller, she is the leading lady of this movie, and she was unfortunately dubbed in both the English and Japanese versions. Why was that? Well, apparently because she was not part of the union, the Screen Actors Guild. She was actually a model who happened to have been working in Japan when Toho execs caught wind of her and decided to add her to this movie. And because she was living in Japan, she was simply unavailable, and because she was not part of the union, they did not reach out to her in order for her to ADR her own lines. At which point she was just dubbed by a completely different actress who sounded nothing like her. A little bit of a kind of amusing trivia factoid there, but no less, it just kind of adds to the charm of this movie, regardless of which version of the movie you watch. And luckily, this movie is available on Blu-ray, along with the other Toho Kong that is probably significantly more famous than this movie. And I should also mention that Gorosaurus himself would go on to appear in a lot of Godzilla media, in both Destroy All Monsters as well as the got any Godzilla merchandise, the comics, the toys, what have you. So this movie definitely does have a unique legacy of its own, that would expand to this very day.
And it's funny we're talking about this movie now because if Rankin Bass still doesn't quite ring a bell, they're also responsible for pretty much all of those stop motion Christmas specials that y'all might have grown up watching.
How appropriate that we would be doing this panel in the middle of December.
Yes. All right, Spectreman. The evil Dr. Gory invades Earth with monstrous pollutants. An entity known as the Overlord calls upon Joji Gamo to become the robotic supergiant Spectreman. This would be the fourth entry of P Productions' Tokusatsu lineup, which also consists of Ambassador Magma, which we covered last time actually, as well as Lion Maru. Spectreman also predates Kamen Rider in featuring a transforming cybernetic hero, and another thing about its place in Tokusatsu history is that it also came out the same year as Godzilla vs. Hedorah, which is another film that heavily addressed pollution, as well as a major crisis in Japan going on at that time. And funny enough, the first monster that Spectreman fights is named Hedoron. And in fact, Hedorah was originally going to be named Hedoron, but when Toho found out about Hedoron, they decided to just swap the end of its name with something else. Completely separate monster, we swear. Spectreman is Spectreman is also one of
do
those
not feel.
Spectreman is also one of those shows that has gained quite a following in Latin American territories, especially Brazil, and and an artist that Andres and I know told me that Spectreman does have quite a following in Brazil, to the point where there are actual Spectreman memes in Brazil. Unfortunately, I have not included them here. One of them apparently pertains to Dr. Gore, who is a phenomenal villain in the series, by the way. But I suppose if you want to find out for yourself, Spectreman is available on YouTube in its entirety, but only in English.
All right, now on to the television. Also, continuing from Spectreman, we have another television hero. That is Android Kikaider from 1972 to 1973. Dr. Komyoji creates an android to fight off the evil organization Dark, led by Dr. Gill. And in order to create this android, he develops a conscious circuit, the Gemini circuit, that gives him the ability to learn, to slowly become human, to eventually understand the complexities of the good and evil sides of mankind. Unfortunately, before he is able to finish his creation and give him the chance to become a proper human-like being, Dr. Komyoji is taken away, stolen by Dark. We are led to believe that he is dead for the time being, leading to Android Kikaider to eventually learn through his own experiences what it means to be truly human. This was one of Shotaro Ishinomori's favorite creations, especially concerning its design. Essentially, this was Shotaro Ishinomori's take on Pinocchio, an artificial humanoid being who aspires to become a real boy, or in this case, learning to become human. And Ishinomori was very proud of this particular design because he deemed it of more expressive, more symbolic than any design that he had previously created. With the character of Kikaider, he is half blue, half red, representing the duality of mankind, both its good and evil sides, both the light and the dark, its selfless and selfish, its benevolency and its cruelty. And it's through Kikaider's own journeys that is able to learn the complexities of the human emotion, that all humans are capable of good and evil decisions, and sort of creates a more morally gray type of tone, especially in the case of the manga. Things are, of course, much more lighthearted here with the television series from the 70s, Everything is more like uplifting. But there's also a lot of twists and turns. There are points when Kikaider's own allies are turned against him, when he is forced to make difficult decisions, especially in the case of how he confronts the villain Kikaider, a villain who has the brain of someone important to him. So, in such a way, in order to defeat Kikaider, he is forced to kill off the brain of the person that is deeply important to him. Speaking of which, Kikaider himself would go on to become an incredibly popular villain, going on to inspire countless rivals, most famously Proto Man from the Mega Man series. Which, if you watch enough Kikaider, you'll learn that Mega Man and Proto Man are essentially the video game versions of Kikaider and Kikaider. Kikaider would eventually go on to have his own spin-off movie with 1995's Mechanical Violator Kikaider, which we covered in last year's panel of Hidden Gems. Kikaider would also go on to have an anime adaptation, a sequel in the form of Kikaider 01, an anime adaptation later in the 2000s, and a reboot in 2014. The first two episodes of Android Kikaider are available on YouTube on Toei's official Tokusatsu channel, and it is coming soon to Blu-ray in thanks to the wonderful folks at Discotech.
Alright, so stepping out of the realm of superheroes and kaiju, we have Submersion of Japan, directed by Shiro Moritani, based on the novel by Sakio Komatsu. When scientists discover a haunting revelation that could wipe out Japan, it is only a matter of time before the nation can save its people from such a devastating disaster. And how? This movie stars legendary actors Keiju Kobayashi, who would go on to play the Prime Minister in 1984's Return of Godzilla, and Kamen Rider, if you don't know him from that, Segata Sanshiro himself, Hiroshi Fujioka. This movie also features special effects by Teruyoshi Nakano, who has also done the effects for a majority of the 70s Godzilla films, and this is easily Nakano on top of his game here. The just the amount of effort put into the miniature work is second to none, to the point where this is another one of those movies where Toho would reuse stock footage from for later films. There's a little bit of Submersion of Japan footage in Godzilla 1984, in fact, and this would also be the highest-grossing film of Japan in 1973, which is a testament to how well the drama, as well as the tension and suspense, is executed in this film, which is also available on Internet Archive.
And it should be mentioned that when it came to Japan Sings, it would go on to have a remake, a parody, and even an anime adaptation. So it's definitely a movie that has stuck around in Japanese pop culture for quite some time.
Oh, for sure. It's also received a couple of TV adaptations over the year as well. The last one coming out in 2021, I believe. It's called Japan Sinks People of Hope. It's a Netflix and NHK collab, or not NHK. MBS, I believe, and it's available on Netflix as we speak. All right, now we go into not only one of my all-time favorite tokusatsu films, but one of my all-time favorite films, period. This is The Red Spectacles, directed by Mamoru Oshii in his first ever live-action feature film. A former Panzerkampf returns from exile to reunite with his comrades, only to find that things are not what they seem. Up to this point, Oshii has largely worked in animation, most notable being Urusei Yatsura, and here he incorporates a lot of animation techniques into filming live action. Just the way it's shot and edited is very reminiscent to that of anime, even though it isn't anime, which makes it all the more appealing. Speaking of which, this is also the first feature film in the Kaiobaro saga. I guarantee a lot of you who have seen Genro the Wolf Brigade may be looking at this picture thinking it's oddly familiar. You'd be surprised to find that Genro the Wolf Brigade is actually a prequel to The Red Spectacles, just set decades earlier. And this also features a ton of anime industry heavy hitters, such as Yutaka Izubuchi, who would do designs for Patlabor and Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack. In the image, you see Shigeru Chiba, who has had a phenomenal career up to this point. He's the narrator of Fists of the North Star, he's Megane and Urusei Yatsura, and he is also the Japanese voice of Beast Wars Megatron, which is funny because opposite of him is Tesho Genda, who's also had quite the career himself. He's the Japanese voice for Optimus Prime and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and even Don Fry in Godzilla Final Wars. And thankfully, because this is an independent film, it is available on YouTube. I should also note that there has recently been a Kickstarter campaign a fundraiser campaign for a 4K restoration of the film, but it has long since been past due. But thankfully, those who have contributed to the restoration are going to be able to see it to completion. And speaking of independent cinema, we have The Adventure of Denchu-Kozo from '87, directed by very, very renowned filmmaker Shinya Tsukamoto. A boy with an electric pole sticking from his back is transported to a future overrun by cybernetic vampires. And of course, with it being Shinya Tsukamoto, it's just as insane as you think it is, if not more. This was one of his college film projects, which also comprises of a lot of people who he would continue to work with, especially Tamaro Taguchi, who you see to the very right of this photo here. And this is the precursor to Tetsuo the Iron Man, just when you look at the overall aesthetic and how it mixes this weird blend of futuristic biomechanical lack of that would very much be prevalent in Tetsuo the Iron Man, which this is one of the films that it is the origin point for. And this movie is also available on YouTube and Blu-ray as part of Arrow Video's Solid Metal Nightmares for Shinya Tsukamoto's filmography.
And up next is Cyber Ninja from 1988. If you guys were present during last year's Hidden Gems of Tokusatsu panel, you may know that both Davis and I are enormous fans of director Keita Amamiya. And while this wasn't the first project Keita Amamiya ever did, this was in actuality his first ever feature-length film that he directed. Whereas prior he was a character designer as well as a director of various episodes of short TV films, as well as episodes of various Metal Heroes, Kamen Riders, and Super Sentai television shows. So what we have here is an adaptation, a live-action adaptation of the Sega Genesis game Mirai Ninja, featuring a man who is an individual who is part man, part machine. The titular hero battles his way to save a princess from a warlord, set centuries into the future, yet some strikingly familiar to ancient Japan. What we have here is something I like to call like a live-action cyberpunk Samurai Jack. If you remember Samurai Jack from the 90s, early 2000s by Gendy Tartakovsky, Samurai Jack features a plenty of very a significant blend of both cyberpunk and feudal Japan imagery, and that is showcased wonderfully here. You have a mix of old versus new, an old technology, new technology recontextualized as old school ninjas and samurais and warlords. And what we have here is a very simple movie. It's simple yet surprisingly effective. It's also sort of like Amamiya's take on Kamen Rider, where you have the protagonist Shiranui, who is robbed of his humanity. He's forced to become a cyborg, mindless cyborg slave for the villains, to which he ultimately escapes, tries to fight the villains on his own, while also being persecuted by his former friends and allies, believing that he is no better than the very villains who are seeking to destroy the human race. But in turn, it is through his adventures with his comrades that he's able to eventually face off against his creators in an attempt to take back his humanity. this film also features the debut of suit actor Mizuho Yoshida, who would go on to be a suit actor not just for this movie, but for a lot of Keita Mamiya's projects, from Cyber Ninja to Zeram 2 to Tekoki Mikazuki, all the way to even 2001's Godzilla, playing Godzilla himself in the film GMK. So it is really cool to see this movie as it's sort of like the origin point for a lot of Keita Mamiya's tropes and visual thematic narrative themes that would go on to remain constant throughout his career. That sort of cyber biopunk aesthetic, a lot of his emphasis on visual storytelling, a lot of the synthesizer type music, a lot heavy use of like feudal Japan, samurai like modernized samurai like stories. So it's very interesting to watch this, not just as a fan of Keita Mamiya, but also as a fan of cyberpunk action stories. This movie has a wide array. For honestly, for a TV movie, it is surprisingly ambitious with just how much is a visual, how many visuals are on display in terms of fight choreography, costuming, animation, model works, practical effects. A lot of it's very much so like can tell you that this man can do a lot with very little, and it's no wonder how he would go on to have the career that he ended up having in the decades to come.
And speaking of Keita Amamiya, we have Mobile Cop Jiban from Toei. After an attack from the criminal syndicate Baragon, a detective is rebuilt into a crime-fighting robot. This is the 8th entry in Toei's Metal Hero series, which includes Space Sheriff Gavan, which we touched upon in last year's Hidden Gems panel. There's also Cherivan, Spielbahn, like a whole slew of these robotic superheroes who fight for justice. This combines elements of RoboCop, 8-Man, and Robot Detective K. Just also kind of touching back on Kamen Rider, where we have a protagonist whose humanity was essentially stripped to them, as the last remainder of what they carry is put into a robotic body. Especially with that RoboCop comparison, because you'll see that Keita Amamiya really liked RoboCop. I mean, you have the plot written down right there. That's RoboCop. And much like Gavan and a good handful of the other Metal Hero series, this is also available on Blu-ray too. Thanks to, once again, Discotek, who's been making a tremendous effort making these lesser-known shows more widely available. Really just goes to show how rich this genre is, and how there's so much more that's yet to be uncovered, yet so beloved in Japan. Yes, all right. Here we have Gunhead, which I briefly talked about when Andres and I were talking about Mecha a couple years back. A ragtag team of soldiers infiltrate an island to sabotage a supercomputer to win a war against machines. However, the island is revealed to be this gigantic mechanical death trap. And I should also note that this war was caused over a substance called Texmexium. That is just stupid, insane, and awesome at the same time. This film is also very important, as it was a collaboration between Toho and studio Sunrise. Sunrise is a major anime production company responsible for the likes of Cowboy Bebop, City Hunter, and especially Mobile Suit Gundam. So much that like Kunio Okawara was actually considered to do the mechanical designs in this film, but couldn't. However, they did settle with Shoji Kawamori, who had actually created the Macross franchise and is responsible for a lot of the original Generation 1 Transformers designs like Optimus Prime, Starscream, and Grimlock. And this film also stars Masahiro Takashima, who would go on to appear in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 as Kazuma, and he would also appear in Godzilla vs. Destroya as the same character as well. He was also in Orochi, the eight-headed dragon, as the lead hero in that. And what makes Gunhead so interesting is that while it wasn't very successful as a film, it would spawn like an entire manga spin-off. It would get a video game on the ZX Spectrum, and model kits, which the model kit for Gunhead has actually seen a reissue a couple years back. I also own it. and
Of course you would.
There was a VHS and DVD release from ADV, a company that pretty much no longer exists, and there is a 20th anniversary a 20th anniversary Blu-ray that came out in Japan, and here's hoping that with Discotech's efforts to bring over more tokusatsu, this ends up being one of them, along with other films like Sayonara Jupiter. But for now, this is available for your viewing pleasure on Internet Archive.
It should also be mentioned that when it comes to Gunhead, there was also a short film that was made as a promotional video for the model kit that Davis brought up. And they had brought on the special effects director from the Heisei Godzilla series to direct this short, which is included in the most recent Japanese Blu-ray for Gunhead. Next up is a film that I recently came to learn of, thanks heavily to Davis here, that being Lady Battle Cop from 1990. After a terrorist attack fatally wounds her, tennis athlete Kaoru is revived. Hey, wait a minute. Yes, so indeed, RoboCop was in 1990, RoboCop was still very much so on the minds of Toei and designer Kei Tamamiya when they created their very first V Cinema film, V Cinema being the label they used for their brand new line of direct-to-video films, being that direct-to-videos was a brand new format for Toei at the time. But what you have here is less so a RoboCop knockoff, which a lot of people seem to think it is, based on the name and based on the surface, looking at it on the surface level. Well, what you actually have here is very much so like a more grittier, darker, more adult take on Toei's Metal Hero series. In fact, it shares a lot of DNA with said franchise, given that the director of the movie previously worked on episodes of Jiban and Jiraiya, as well as having Kei Tamamiya once again as a designer for this film. Stunt actress Yoshie Seki, she herself, the suit actor for Lady Battle Cop, would also go on to appear in more tokusatsu works, namely Kamen Rider J and Juto B-Fighter, the series that would go on to become Big Bad Beetleborgs. The film is available on YouTube and as well as Internet Archive, but with hopes this movie can get an official release in the near future, especially since the movie itself is less so of a cop of a hero, of a character from law enforcement. It's more like a revenge story, akin to, like, say, The Punisher, where this woman is robbed of her mortality, robbed of her humanity, robbed of her love, the love of her life, and is pretty much on a killing spree to take down the very people who took everything from her. Meanwhile, you got a psychic who is seemingly on steroids. You got a lot of graphic violence, a lot of bloodshed, crazy and unique and inventive fight scenes. Again, for a direct-to-video film, this movie pulls out all the stops to provide a very fun, over-the-top, bombastic experience.
Speaking of some gritty tokusatsu, we have Guyver Dark Hero, directed by Steve Wang. When Sean is merged with an alien bioweapon, he struggles to control its power and stumbles upon a new alien conspiracy from the Kronos Corporation. This is based on the Yoshiki Takaya manga Bio Booster Armor Guyver, which has received its own fair share of anime adaptations. This also stars David Hayter, also known as Solid Snake, with stunts by Koichi Sakamoto, who would go on to do special effects work for the Ultra series. This film is also the origin of the famous Guyver kick, which is when a character jumps up in the air, does a fake high kick, only to follow it with a lower real kick behind. And Steve Wang directed this as a way to apologize for the first movie, as there was a lot of executive meddling with the first live-action Guyver film, to where, like, last minute they decided to make it a kids movie. That first Guyver film did receive a 4K release, but thankfully Guyver 2, or Guyver Dark Hero, is available on DVD. And here's another one of my favorites. We have Electric Dragon 80,000 volts from Gakuryu Ishii, also known as Sogo Ishii. A high voltage feud is formed between a punk guitarist and a Buddhist who are both strengthened by electricity. What also makes this one notable is that it stars Tadanobu Asano, who some of you may recognize from the Thor films, or Raiden from the new Mortal Kombat reboot, as well as actor Masatoshi Nagase. Funny enough, this as a way to promote the film, this film did receive toys from Takara's Microman line of action figures, which was spawned from their Henshin Cyborg line of action figures, which then spawned Cyclone, which then spawned Transformers. Okay, I'm getting a little too carried away. And this was also released on Blu-ray, thanks to Discotech.
And to bring this up into the 2010s, we have Giant God Warrior appears in Tokyo. A strange creature of unknown origin lays waste to the world. This is an official prequel to Hayao Miyazaki's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, showcasing the destruction of modern-day mankind's civilization, with a full appearance of the God Warriors that were previously teased in the original Nausicaa film. This is also a collaboration between Studio Ghibli and Studio Kara, which means that, yes, this is essentially a Ghibli movie made by the people behind Evangelion, with director Shinji Higuchi at the helm, along with screenplay by Hideaki Anno himself. This movie is a wonderful array of special effects, majority of it being practical, if you can believe that. The puppet itself to portray the titular God Warrior is absolutely stupendous. It is available on Internet Archive. It's short, it's sweet, it's simple and effective. Definitely check it out. And finally, to wrap things up, we have Garo, the One Who Shines in the Darkness from 2013. This is the first, last year we finished things off with the original Garo series from 2005. This is the first Garo series to be set in an alternate continuity. So new character, new worlds, new Garo transformations, new take on a familiar Monster of the Week premise. In the future, a volcanic city is ruled by creatures known as horrors as a Makai Knight vows to hunt them down. Like I said, this is the first series to be set in what fans call the Ryugaverse, named after the protagonist of the show, Ryuga Dogai. It's the first Garo series to use primarily CGI for 99% of the protagonist's suits, and was a show that received enough success that it would continue in the form of sequel series, movies, and spin-offs. The show has yet to receive an official release in America, but is easily available on Internet Archive. So yes, like we mentioned before, there is so much Tokusatsu to talk about that even with 2 full-on panels, we have yet to even scratch the surface of this wonderful world of superheroes, aliens, monsters, and all matters of madness. But we thank you everybody for joining us for this panel. We hope that we have piqued your interest into exploring this world of special effects, of rubber suits and matte paintings and models galore. We hope that you get the chance to check out a lot of the movies that we have seen here, and would continue to do so and explore more of this world the same way we did all those years back, that from the very franchises that got us into this wonderful genre to begin with.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching us ramble about one of our favorite sectors of Japanese media, which is also one of the more important ones. We're still getting a huge variety of various monsters and superhero movies and shows to this very day, and just to kind of reiterate what Andres said before, we're only just scratching the surface, especially with last year's panel where we almost ran out of time and had to just blast through whatever we could.
So yes, with that said, this concludes our panel. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoy the rest of Casa Con, and hope you all have a wonderful day.
Enjoy Casa Con. Take it easy.